Thanks so much, James. And yeah, welcome everybody this evening for our third Bioeconomy Winter webinar. So tonight we are talking about manure and residues and the different valuable products that we can make out of those. And the Austrian partner of the COOPID project that we're involved with in MTU was a real inspiration for this particular webinar. As part of the COOPID project, Michael Quirk, who will speak a little bit later, visited Südösterreichische Pelletierungsgenossenschaft, which is a pelleting manufacturer in Austria. So I'll just start first with giving you some background to the COOPID project. For those of you who've been with us before, you might know something about the project already, but basically it's a collaboration between 10 different European countries and 11 partner organizations within those countries to facilitate knowledge exchange around the bioeconomy and bio-based products, bio-based technologies for bioeconomy acceleration for primary producers especially. And there's a 4-level knowledge transfer strategy as part of that. So the first level was identifying showcases of successful bio-based product production by primary producers within those regions, and showcasing those to ambassadors from the 10 different European countries. So farmers and other primary producers from the European countries who visited the showcases of other countries. The other levels then are where the ambassadors share their knowledge with others in their own countries, and then further knowledge sharing through general media, through social media, but really emphasizing the kind of peer-to-peer sharing element of it. Through this project, we hope to reach 4,000 producers from farming, forestry, fishing, etc., and 5,000 other stakeholders in the European bioeconomy. And there's particular emphasis on cooperatives within this project. A lot of the showcases are cooperatives, including this one from Austria. And part of the reason for that is that individual farms, through collaboration with others in a cooperative, can, I suppose, get that economy of scale and pool the resources to make their business models more sustainable, to really get more engaged within the opportunities offered by the transition towards a bio-based economy. Cooperatives have the resources to invest in innovation, to facilitate knowledge transfer, and to really help producers to gain access to innovative technology, new findings, new value chains a lot faster than might happen if people were operating completely alone. Cooperatives can also publicize what their members are doing a lot more. So again, those pooled resources, and as exemplified by this project, cooperatives can also, set aside resources for looking at what public funding is available in order to help farmers innovate more, and other producers too. So to look further at this particular example of the Südösterreichische Pelletierungsgenossenschaft, this is a cooperative that started from a challenge. So in 1997, with Natura 2000, a huge area of southeastern Styria, which is the largest agricultural region within Austria, was designated as a nature reserve, right? So meadows where I suppose hay pasture was being cultivated was designated as having to be traditionally managed, so minimal inputs, etc. So no possibility for improving the grass, as we would say here, and consider that this was over 15,000 hectares. So that hay from the conservation meadows, it was low quality, and there wasn't a lot of beef cattle production already, so it wasn't like you could just shift it to a suckler grazing system or something like that. And also because it had to be cut quite late in the year in order to abide by the regulations of the new nature conservation area, the hay tended to be kind of low quality. So the local farmers collaborated with a research institute called Joanneum Research to find a solution for the meadow hay and other waste streams that were present on their farms. This is a big maize producing area, so corn cobs were also part of that. And together they identified that producing feed and bedding pellets for livestock specifically was a potential value chain that the farmers could enter into. So in 2013, 4 farmers came together to form a cooperative to manufacture the pellets. So they started originally just looking at hay and trying to see, okay, are there other waste or residue material here that we could use for this? Straw was an immediate one, the corn cobs as well, husks from wheat, from grain processing. All of those were identified as having potential for the pelleting. Alfalfa was another one, again, a really high value product actually, alfalfa, for converting into pellets for increasing the feed value. Now they're looking at biochar, so they're continuing to innovate. Biochar is one of the more recent materials that they've added and that they're experimenting with, again, to increase the value of the pellets that are available. And their local competitive advantage, I suppose, is that in contrast to agricultural pellets that were being imported, the pellets that they're producing are made from unused agricultural residues from within that region in Austria. So it's returning the nutrients to the local cycle. And this is an area with a strong regional identity. So that's actually very appealing, especially for the household level products that we'll mention later on. The farms that provide raw materials are also buyers of the pellets because these are agri pellets. They're using them for feed, for bedding, for fuel, and a growing medium. And as the main income stream for this cooperative is actually the contract manufacturing of the pellets. So they provide the pellets, the pelleting service at a reduced rate for the farmers, and that's a big draw for local farmers. So these are the different materials that they've been using for pellets, and there's a range of pellets available, but we're going to focus on straw pellets in this presentation. Just briefly to, I suppose, go into the mechanics of it a little bit. The material is whatever it is, alfalfa or straw, whatever. It's all separated with a mill to break it all down into little pieces, basically. Apart from the hay and straw, some of the material might need to be dried to reduce the moisture content. And then it's mixed in a mixer that uses superheated steam, so between 100 to 110 degrees Celsius, which sterilizes the material. And it's pressed through a matrix. It's extruded through this matrix that, again, is adding huge amount of pressure under hydrothermal characteristics, I suppose, hydrothermal conditions, that's the word I'm looking for. So this ensures that the material is sterile, and then it's cooled so that it's durable, so that it has a long life, and siloed until it's ready to be sold in 1-ton bags or 20-kilo bags or whatever. So now Michael, who visited the plant where they're producing these pellets, is going to tell you a little bit more. Michael is a tillage farmer with his own wind and solar energy operation as well, which the solar part has just been finalized. So over to you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. Yeah, just briefly about ourselves, we're farming here in East Cork on the eastern side of the harbour. We're tillage farmers, and we've been started doing things as sustainably as we could for quite a while. We would have planted hardwood trees a long time ago now, 15, 16 years ago, and we've been thinning them out since, actually, so that's working out pretty well. And we just started developing a 2-turbine wind farm on the farm in 2001, and we completed in 2011. and we began our solar journey in 2016, and we just actually energized today. So that was a big day for that. So that's kind of my background. And as regards COOPID and the journey to Austria, I mean, the first thing to say about all that was that it was super well organized, and it was a great opportunity, particularly coming when it did. I think it came in around the back of COVID at the time, and everybody was sort of in a little bit of a bubble, and we hadn't really gotten anywhere. And you know, you can get focused on what we were there for, but in general, it was just a relief to go somewhere and meet some people and get out in the fresh air, talk to some other farmers from other countries, which is always a benefit. And that was the biggest benefit I took from it, because, you know, when you get talking to farmers from other countries, we all have a lot in common, and we're all trying to do the same thing, which is basically survive in an era of kind of creeping intensification, lower prices at one stage. Well, probably not this year, but due to other reasons. But we're basically in competition to survive in our farms, which are of reasonable size and more or less the same size. The interesting about Austria wasn't the region we're in, was that the size of the farms, they seem pretty small, and there was a great emphasis on quality rather than quantity. Whereas in Ireland, the emphasis now for quite a while has been on quantity and producing as much as you can as cheaply as possible. Whereas the Austrian model seemed to me more of a quality type enterprise for everybody. And you know, just from looking in from the outside, the standard of living there seemed really impressive, and the farmers seemed really content with what was happening. The other good thing about it was because straw pelleting, as far as I know, is not an Irish phenomenon at all. I don't know if we are pelleting straw here, if we're pelleting anything here really, apart from rations that we feed to our cows, chickens and pigs, whatever. The idea of pelleting straw was an interest, you know. I was wondering, why are they doing it? What are the advantages of it? How is it done? And it, you know, to visit the cooperative was great. They had, they were very content in what they were doing to producing a good product. They were shifting a good product. We went to visit different locations and how they were using it. I'll go on to that later on. But the first thing that you'd have to say about the pelleting thing was, even though they were working as efficiently as possible with trying to keep it keep costs as low as they are, they did make the point that they could import the pellets cheaper. I think it was from Poland, than what they could produce them. So you see, the thing about agriculture for me is that what we're all doing in agriculture is that we're trying to attract young people into agriculture, and young people now, particularly in the region I live here, where there's a lot of really well-paid employment. You know, the economic model has to really work to encourage young people into agriculture. So that was a sort of a down point. The thing that the fact that they were working so hard since 2013, I think, 14, but still the idea of a cheaper import was there hanging over their heads, and I think it was preventing them from expanding really. One of the most interesting places we visited was it was a pretty intensive farm. He was a kind of an arable farmer, but he had a chicken kind of a broiler house set up where they were using the pellets. And the pellets in that situation, because of the absence of dust and the way they were soaking up moisture from the chickens, and that they could be spread easily and removed easily, it made a whole heap of sense. I mean, if you brought a lot of our larger chicken producers over and they saw that, I think they would have been really impressed, because I think some of the alternatives here regards chopping straw and blowing it into sheds, which in theory, you know, is fine, but in practice is a nightmare. So that was really impressive. The same when we went to a pig farm, they were using some of the pellets to add roughage to the feed for the sows, but it was a relatively small pig farm by Irish standards. But the family that had it, I mean, it was immaculately clean. It was very well run. They seemed to be doing really well there. But it just struck me that if you had a pig farm in Ireland of that size, you wouldn't have a hope of surviving, to be honest with you. So they must really be producing really quality product, because it's obviously not going straight to supermarkets. It must be more of an artisan side of a market that they have for it. And then some of the other pelleting stuff, we moved on then to, it was like a cottage thing. It was a tunnel set up where they were using the pellets around, I think, corn plants. Actually, we got to the mushroom thing. Sorry there, Tracey. Yeah, the mushroom thing was it. Yeah, the mushroom thing was a real niche thing. It was a lady that was producing sort of what you call rare mushroom species in a sort of a controlled environment, and using the pellet as the source of as just they impregnated the pellet as a substrate with the microbes for the mushrooms. I mean, to me, I mean, that kind of went over my head a small bit, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm sure she seemed to have a really good market there. I just couldn't imagine that happening here, because it seemed to be really, really labor intensive, and it didn't seem to be a route to sort of make it into a kind of a more commercial business. So I didn't really get too much about that. Didn't really land with me. But then we moved to where do we go next? We went, yeah, we had this idea where they were using the pellets around plants just to reduce weed level. But what they did say about the straw pellets was that the straw pellets were a natural slug repellent. And I know from being a tillage farmer myself here that a lot of the products that we would traditionally use for removing and killing slugs in our crops have been kind of outlawed over the last few years. So that was pretty interesting. I think that if you were in the horticultural area and that was a product that worked, and it worked just for that reason alone, apart from all the other reasons they're listed in the slide, I think that would have made a lot of sense in a commercial way. They did debate on that visit around the idea of corn cobs. They were pelleting corn cobs, but there didn't seem to be a commercial machine available that could remove the corn firstly and then collect the cobs at the same time. So there was a bit of a debate about that. But I guess these are all chicken and egg situations. I mean, you know, what comes first? Does the industry come first, or does the machinery come first, or does the demand come first? So I mean, that's always a balancing act. On the trip as well, whereas there was I would have met farmers from Finland, Italy, Greece, I think Germany as well, maybe. I think more farmers, it would have the whole journey would have benefited from more farmers. A lot of the people on the journey were people who were running the program in their own countries, so they weren't really on the ground trying to do the business. And there was a lack of an emphasis on the economics of the whole thing. We never really got to know exactly how profitable these different farms were, and how the pelleting was affecting their profitability. The only guy who really got into that was the chicken guy. So he was making it work from a financial point of view, because he was the kind of a guy that if it didn't work from a financial point of view, I don't think he would have been doing it. So yeah, a little bit more emphasis on the profit and loss of all these things would have been a great help. I think we would have learned a lot more from that way. But overall, from an Irish perspective, the thing about straw in Ireland is that there's already market for straw already. You know, in fact, I sold some straw today. Like it's an all year round kind of a thing. How do you get straw pelleting? How do you start, or where would you start, and where would you get the demand from? I think the demand would probably come from what I could see from the poultry industry and from the pig industry. I think that would be where it would come from, because there's definitely advantages to pelleting for those two businesses. The other ones, I'm not so sure. And then the idea, because everybody, you know, is importing stuff quite freely now in Ireland. I mean, it's not a difficult thing to do with the cooperative structures that we have. If you can produce it at a cost that's lower than the import cost, it's hard to imagine it, you know, really getting going unless it was granted by the department for some reason, unless there was a carbon sort of reducing factor to the whole thing. And then the other thing in Ireland as well is that farmers, we're sort of paid to chop straw coming out the back of the combine now and integrate it into the soil. So that's another use of straw here that wasn't before. We're actually paid now to do that, or if you choose to do that. So but overall, but just to say about the trip was great. Not because of the pelleting. The pelleting was interesting. What was great was that it was a bunch of farmers that we met from different countries talking about things that they were doing. We learned an awful lot from that. And it was super well organized, and we were made feel very welcome, and we got to see a part of the world that we probably would never get to see at a time when we were just coming out of a big restriction. And it was a very positive experience. And I thought about it a lot after, actually, but it's not up to me really to say what the sort of conclusions to this are. I was just there just to maybe to observe and to think about it, and to think about it in a commercial way, because we all have to survive really in a commercial world, and that's the reality of it, I guess. Thanks, Tracey. So I don't really is that
Yeah,
enough to
no,
say?
thanks a million, Michael. Yeah, and absolutely. Like, I think it's great to have ambassadors like yourself there that have, I suppose, really the not just the ear to the ground, but like, are really facing into the cold face of the reality of farming at the moment, and the challenges that go with it. So that economic viewpoint certainly is essential. Um, I suppose just from the co-op themselves, like they would have shared with our Austrian partner, with ourselves, kind of what they thought were the important points for their success with this.
Yeah.
And yeah, they really saw that kind of cooperation with universities, with the agri-feed companies internally in the co-op structure, and with the local farmers as a big part of that success. And then trying to investigate all the time multiple uses. So I'd said the biochar is something that they're looking into going forwards, incorporating biochar into the feed pellets. So yeah, thanks a million, Michael, for taking us through the different value chains and the applicability within Ireland.
Yeah,
Because it's
and as you know,
obviously
I mean, the
an
cooperative
essential
structure
part here.
isn't a stranger to Ireland. It's a well structured, very, very, very successful model here. And I mean, if you could convince a co-op to pellet for the poultry or pig industry or whatever, then you're onto something, because they don't do anything that doesn't really work financially. I mean, that's what they're all about. And but as regards cooperatives work here, and they've worked here for a long time. A long way they continue to work. Yeah.
Michael, just to say, if people have questions for Tracey and Michael, to put them in the chat. Michael, I have one question. I was going to ask you to pronounce the Austrian showcase, but I'm not going to, because Tracey already did. And I'm not envious that she had to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. What a great job too. Yeah.
Question, just if you maybe, because you've talked a bit about side streams, but just in general, that area of diversification for tillage farmers, because you're looking a lot at solar, you're looking a lot at wind. So how is that working out for you in terms of integration of renewable energy?
How's it working out for me? Well, it's working out great now because we're finished, but I mean, it's like anything. It's when it's over, it's great. When it's going on, it's a nightmare. But like we asked ourselves a question here, myself and Rose, a long time ago, like 20 years ago now, against the backdrop of falling grain prices at the time. Tillage farmers could only go one way. They could only get just enormous, and they have gone enormous in Ireland. I mean, the really serious guys now are cutting more than 1,000 acres of grain, and they have to, not because they want to, because they have to, because you wouldn't really want to do that unless you had to. But so we made the decision to diversify into renewables, and yeah, it worked out for us. But it could have just as easily not. I mean, it's a difficult journey, and it's everything's fantastic when it works out, and what do you do if it doesn't? But we took the risk, and it secured the farm for this generation and the next one and the next one after that. I put it that way, and that's what it was all about. It wasn't about anything else. We didn't become developers in anybody else's farm. We just stuck to our own patch and did our own thing. I didn't really want to be a developer, but we did want to take the technology and make the technology work for our farm, just to secure our farm into the future. Because definitely at that time, growing wheat or barley, it wasn't going to work, and it also it came along around a time where the sugar beet industry collapsed in Ireland as well, and left, and that was a big cornerstone of our working life every winter. no. I mean, and now since it's happened, I mean, since 2019, I mean, there are huge opportunities for farmers in renewables, huge opportunities in farmers in rooftop solar. There's a structure there now. It's called a community structure for farmers to definitely get involved in developing projects on their own land. That was never there before. And that kind of came from demand. It's like if you go back to the pellets thing, what comes first, you know? You do need to have the people knocking on the door, and there was a lot of farmers through the IFA at the time knocking on the door of the energy department here saying, you know, give Irish people an opportunity to develop renewables, because most of the renewables, let's say 99% of them, were being developed by offshore private equity coming into Ireland and developing. So there is an opportunity now, like a ground up opportunity here, and that's a positive from us. And you know, we have a good Minister for Energy at the moment, Eamon Ryan. Without him, my project definitely wouldn't be built, that's for sure. So that's the story there, James. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for joining us, and great to hear the success that's coming at the end of a long journey.
Yeah.